Yeah.
Are we gonna? Oh, they got it. They recording.
Okay. All right. So, all right. So there's two Hebrew words. One is dabak, and one is lava. Dabak has the meanings of cling or stick or cleave. It could also mean stay close, or it could mean to overtake. Like if you're chasing somebody, you catch up to them. Lava can mean join. It can also mean to borrow or to lend. And we got some references here where, some of the places where they are used. The Bach is in Strong's numbers. It's the Hebrew word number 1692, and several places where it's used. We're going to go through some of these. And then lava is H3867 in the Strong's dictionary. Okay, so starting with lava, it can refer to joining. So in Genesis 29:34, again she conceived and bore a son and said, now this time my husband will be attached to me. That's lava, there will be attached, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi. So, this was Leah. She had just born her 3rd son, and she seemed like she named them after however she was feeling or whatever she was experiencing at the time they were born. So she said, this time my husband, her husband didn't like her. He really didn't want to marry her. He wanted to marry Rachel, but he got her instead at first. So my husband will be attached to me. She's hoping, she'll get some more attention from her husband. So lava is will be attached. Therefore, his name was called Levi. Catch the reference there, lava and Levi. So she named him after this word, lava. And Numbers 18, and with you, God is speaking to Aaron, bring your brothers also, the tribe of Levi, the tribe of your father, that they may join, this is lava, they may join you and minister to you before the tent of the testimony. Okay, so that's lava referred to joining. Can also refer to conversion. In Isaiah 14:1, the Lord will have compassion on Jacob, will again choose Israel. This is a recovery from some kind of punishment or judgment on them. And will set them in their own land, and sojourners will join them. That's lava. So people were going to come and convert to Judaism. And Isaiah 56:3, let not the foreigner who has joined himself to the Lord, that's lava, to the Lord. It's a conversion. Lava can also refer to borrowing and lending. If you lend money, that's lava. Okay. The word can mean join or interest. Psalm 112:5, it is well with the man who deals generously and lends, who conducts his affairs with justice. Whoops. So then in Psalm 37:21, it says, the wicked borrows and doesn't repay, but the righteous is generous and lends. So borrow there is and probably lend also is lava, and the wicked borrows and doesn't repay. I thought, that meant, he just wouldn't pay you back. And yes.
Hey, your internet was kind of glitching in and out a little bit, so we're just getting kind of some pause breaks in between.
Okay.
Can you go back maybe 2 slides and run it back from
okay.
So we can transition.
All right. Thank you for letting me know that. So, okay, so this is some verses where lava is used. Here's where it means join. So this is Leah. She conceived and bore a son, and said, now this time my husband will, therefore his name was called Levi. So will be attached as lava, and so that's why she called him Levi, because she felt like, now my husband will be attached to me. I bore him 3 sons. He really doesn't like me. He likes my sister Rachel, but maybe now that I bore him 3 sons, he'll be attached. And with you, this is God speaking to Aaron in Numbers 18. Bring your brothers also, the tribe of Levi, tribe of your father, that they may join you and minister to you before the tent of the testimony, that they may join is also Lava. Okay, and Lava can refer to conversion, so joining yourself to the Lord. So when the Lord brings Jacob back from some kind of punishment or judgment, and again chooses Israel and will set them in their own land, and sojourners will join them. That's Lava. They're going to convert to Judaism. Will surely separate me from his people. So here's a foreigner who wasn't Jewish, joined himself to the Lord. So that's also a conversion. Lava can refer to borrowing and lending. So if you lend money to any of my people, that's Lava. And it is well with the man who deals generously and lends, who conducts his affairs with justice. That's Lava. And then in Psalm 37:21, I think it uses Lava 2 times. The wicked man borrows and doesn't repay, but the righteous is generous and lends. So now this shows the futility of the wicked. So when I read that, the guy is just cheating the guy he borrowed that he never had the money to pay him back. He never even got enough money to pay back his debt. And it just shows how he can borrow, but he can't even pay it back. Okay, so that's the source of these some of these definitions I have. Dabak, okay, now going to the other Hebrew word, dabak, is used quite often in the Old Testament of physical things sticking to each other. So in Job 19:20, my bones stick to my skin. That's dabak. And in Psalm 22:15, a prophecy concerning the Lord on the cross, my strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to my jaws. You lay me in the dust of death. My tongue sticks to my jaws. That's dabak. Okay, dabak also carries the sense of clinging to someone in affection and loyalty. So in Genesis 2:24, when God made a wife for Adam, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast, that's dabak, to his wife. And in Ruth 1:14, when Ruth and Orpah were supposed to go back, Naomi was sending them back to go find other husbands because her sons had died and her husband had died, and she was going back to Israel. She was sending them back to Moab to find some husbands. They lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law. So Orpah kissed her and went back to her people, but Ruth clung to her. That was dabak. She clung to her. The only way she was staying in Moab was if Naomi was staying in Moab. If Naomi went to Israel, Ruth was going to Israel. She was sticking to Naomi. Okay, here's another meaning. Most importantly, using dabak, the Israelites are to cleave to the Lord if his blessing is to be theirs. And so there's some parallel words that, when they're talking about cleave to the Lord, dabak, hold fast to the Lord. Some things that go along with that are fear him, serve him, love him, obey him, swear by his name, walk in his ways, keep his commandments. These are the kinds of things. So in Deuteronomy 10:20, 3 of those in that list show up right in this one verse. You shall fear the Lord your God, you shall serve him and hold fast to him. Hold fast is dabak. And by his name you shall swear. So there, fear the Lord, serve him, swear by his name. All go along with holding fast to him. From another author in that theological word book. Okay, so here's why I was interested in this. I'm a Gentile. I joined myself to the Lord. So I'm like the foreigner who has joined himself to the Lord in Isaiah 56. So let not the foreigner who has joined himself to the Lord say, the Lord will surely separate me from his people. So here joined is the Hebrew word lava. which means joined, but it can also mean borrow or lend. Okay, that's the one in Isaiah 56. Let not the foreigner who has joined himself to the Lord say, the Lord will surely separate me from his people. The Lord is correcting the foreigner who has joined the Lord to minister to him, love him, be his servant, keep his Sabbath, keep his covenant, but he's still concerned that the Lord will cast him off. So the Lord assures this worried one that he is welcome in the Lord's house. So why is the foreigner worrying about being separated from the Lord's people? And I'm thinking perhaps because he has the wrong idea about being joined to the Lord. He's using the word that means join, but also means borrow or lend. He's using lavah here. The borrower and the lender are joined. Okay, I was thinking about what does join have to do with borrowing and lending? But if you think about it, if you lend somebody some money or you borrow some money from somebody, you can never really get that person out of your mind until it's paid back. The borrower doesn't like to see the lender because it reminds him, oh yeah, I owe that guy some money. And the lender isn't happy to see his borrower because it reminds him, oh yeah, that guy never paid me back. So they're joined in an uneasy way. You know, that's how I figure that borrow and lend go together with join here. I don't know. They didn't say in the scholarly articles there, but that's what I get out of it. So both of these words are used to depict the joining of a husband and wife, but there is a difference. So in Genesis 2:24, after God has given man a wife, Moses concludes that the man shall hold fast the bach to his wife. So that's what the verse says in Genesis. Jesus, when the subject of marriage and divorce came up, he interprets this verse to mean that they should never be separated. You can look in Matthew 19:6. The wife is a permanent gift to the man, and he should keep her close for the rest of his life. She should not have to worry that he will cast her off. Okay, that's what Jesus says about marriage. God gave you this woman. You need to hold fast to her. Let not man separate those. Okay, so that's the bach. Okay, here's in Genesis 29, Jacob has a wife, Leah, that he doesn't love. However, Leah bears him 3 sons. So after the birth of the third one, Leah says, now this time my husband will be attached to me. That's lavah, because I have borne him 3 sons. She feels that Jacob owes her now that she has borne him 3 sons. So there's the lending and borrowing aspect of lavah. This is not the unconditional attachment that God had in mind when he gave the first man a wife. Here's Jacob. He has a wife. He still doesn't love her even after she's given him 3 sons, but she's hoping that he will, and she really feels like he owes her. Okay, so she's using the word lavah, not like in Genesis chapter 2, where God said the man should hold fast to his wife. That's the bach. Okay, so here's what I'm saying about what the difference between these two words and what's wrong with the foreigner who thinks that the Lord is going to cast him off after he joined himself lavah to the Lord. So here's this parable that Jesus told in Luke 15 about a man and his 2 sons, and the second son took his inheritance early, and then he spent it all and found himself in poverty. So we'll pick up the story there. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I'll say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. So he's got this idea. He's no longer worthy. He went and wasted his father's money. He's just going to go back and be a servant. But the father won't take the deal. He always considers his son as a son, not a servant. Their relationship is unconditional, and the son cannot work for his keep. He's a member of the family. So in verse 22, the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. See, he says, this my son. And they began to celebrate. Okay. So the son felt that he owed his father some work in order to earn his food and shelter. He already took his whole inheritance and wasted it. So he wanted the status of a borrower repaying a loan. But the father knew that this was his son. Although he had gone astray, when he returned, he was still a son. When he went astray, he was his son. When he returned, he was still a son. So when we join ourselves to the Lord in love and service, we become family. And we don't have to worry that he's going to separate us from his people. Okay, so lava, is the word that's used in Isaiah 56. Let not the foreigner who joins himself to the Lord say, he will surely separate me from his people. So it could be that whole feeling of I join myself to the Lord. I'm gonna, I'm temporary here. I'm on borrowed time here. I'm repaying a loan. No, that's not how the Lord sees it. When we join him, we're part of his family, and he's never going to separate us. We can't work for that. We're just his children. So if you're looking into this further, in 1 Corinthians 6:17, he who is joined to the Lord, and Matthew 19:5, where the Lord quotes the verse in Genesis 2, man shall be joined to his wife. The Greek word for join in these two New Testament verses is also used in the Greek translation of dabak in Deuteronomy 10:20. So that might be something if you're going to look into that. And that's what I have.
Yeah, that's good, Brother Steve. Yeah, there's several kind of questions, just of pondering that I have. It is interesting though in Isaiah chapter 56, where it says, "The foreigner that lavas himself to the Lord should have nothing to be concerned about," essentially. And then also in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verses 20, it says that you shall fear the Lord your God, and you should serve him, and to him should you devok and take oaths in his name. Both of those positions essentially seems as if the responsibility or the command is given to the person to do that. So like in Deuteronomy 10, that was a command for said person to cling to the Lord versus the Lord clinging to them. Same thing with the borrowing and the lending. In Isaiah 56, it says, for he who joins himself to the Lord. Now, in the word lava, comma, I thought of it more of contractual joining. Where it's like the reason that on the borrow and the lender is like we are now joined by an agreement, or we're joined together by an oath. The oath is that I give you money, you said you give me back money. So now the joining of the two is now conditional based off of the agreement of the money. That's where the joining comes in. It's like we now have an agreement that now puts us together, but at some point that agreement could therefore be satisfied. You could eventually satisfy that particular agreement. Once I pay my debtor back, I no longer hold that agreement. We are no longer joined together. So that's where I differentiate, or I hear the differentiation between the devak and lava. Now, what's also kind of interesting, in the story or the parable of the father, one of the questions that arose was, how to pull that, was that Luke 19, right? Isn't that the parable of the lost son?
Luke chapter 15.
15, okay. Something I'll look into further, but there he hold on, the parable of the son, the son. It says this, where the son comes back and he says, so he returned, verse 20. So he returns home to his father, And while he was still a far way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son and embraced and kissed him. Okay. One thing that's happening there is that the father still saw the son coming, right? So then let me keep it going. So 21, and he said to his son, and then the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against both you and heaven, or both against heaven and you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. He ain't running nothing, but that's what he said. And his father said, bring quickly the finest robe in the house, put it on him, put a ring on him, put some sandals on him, kill the fattened calf. We must celebrate. And verse 24 is where my question comes in. It says, for this son of mine was dead. So though he was always his son, there was a period of time before he returned that he was constituted as a dead son, and those promises of the household was not given to him. So there was a type of separation that's evident, and that's the separation of death. Like death can still separate. I see that very clearly. Like he couldn't celebrate, he couldn't give the fattened calf and the ring if the son did not position himself to receive that. So that correlates with the command of clinging to the Lord. Like the son could not have received the benefits of being a son unless he chose to go back and cling to the father's house. Because at some point, this son, though a son, nonetheless was a dead son. So nothing of the father's house was given to him, granted to him, positioned to him, or celebrated for him. He was dead, or considered dead. Though he was physically alive, positionally he was dead. So I still see, where I'm seeing in this joining, that there is a joining of oneself to the Lord. And we're going to get into that here just in a second when we get to Deuteronomy chapter 10. We'll kind of work that divide, or that, you know, and where that idea comes from, and how does that look practically. Okay. So yes, I see that conditional or the agreement. And then let me see, the other thing was it's just interesting, all right? It's just interesting that in Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, the Lord gave a condition to the man about this woman that he gave him. He says, you know, because at that time, there was no father or no mother to be said of that was earthly, right? Adam and Eve. So there's no father or mother to be said. So it seems as if this verse has a insert, right, that was not essentially, may have not been present in that current statement. I don't know, question mark, comma, right? Because it's like God didn't say, hey, for this reason, you should leave your father and your mother, because that concept of father and mother at that time was not even a thing, right? They had no children, no father, no mother. So it seems as if that was just kind of in parentheses, Moses going back and, you know, and writing the Torah. It's like, hey, this is why I'm giving these other commands, right? Like, because in here in Genesis, he says, you know, this is why a man shall leave his father and his mother and should cling to his wife. It's just interesting enough that God gave that condition to man about clinging to this wife or clinging to this woman, because I would almost, I could be wrong, but it's very plausible that without that condition, go to Genesis chapter 3, and she forced him, or she led him to eat the fruit. Could it be that he would be like, hey, I'm done with her. Get rid of this woman. Because, you know, that is just like, I don't think so. This woman that got me kicked out of paradise, I'm done with her. So he said, before you get to that point, let me just go ahead and put this caveat on it. You were to cling to her. That's it, you know, because I know And by one more chapter, you're going to want to leave her, but cling to her. I don't know. That just seems real. I didn't hear that until tonight. There's just like, but the mother would be like, hey, bro, can I stay? Still in the garden. She could go and do what she got to go do. He's like, nah, I done told you, y'all clinging, y'all debacking, right? So anyway, I don't know. That could be a overstatement. I don't think so. I'm gonna stick with it because I understand. So, so this idea or this command of devak or this clinging to is one of the relational equities or one of the relational attributes of a person to God, right? Too many, like we know that there is some internal attributes, Deuteronomy 6:4 that you should love the Lord your God, all of your heart and all of your soul and all of your strength, right? And so that's kind of the internal thing. But here in Deuteronomy chapter 10, there's also this seems like a external or a tangible way of being in relationship with the Lord, because he gives these kind of caveats of like, how am I supposed to? I know to love God, but how am I supposed to interact with him? What does it mean to actually love him? How do I demonstrate my love to him? How do I navigate this thing, right? So verse 19, it says, it goes on and it gives, and so Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 19 gives us kind of a recap, right? It says, therefore, love the strangers, right? So there it is, he's introducing love the strangers. So he's saying, now you demonstrate this expression to others, this expression of love. First, love me, but love others. And how, right? He's giving us how he says, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt, right? So that goes right back to the first command. I am the Lord your God. You should have I am the Lord your God who rescued you out of the land of Egypt. You should have no other gods before me. So he's always reminding them that part of the reason or part of the necessity of part of the necessity of love is to be reminded of who he is, or that he is a can't think of the word, it begins with a P. He rescued them, right? He was a rescuer. What's that darn word? He's the one that rescued them out of the land of Egypt. He was their salvation. He was their provision. He was the one who rescued you out of the land of Egypt. Why? To call you to myself, to be my people. Okay, cool, Lord. Now we're your people, and you want us to. How do you want us to resonate with this? And this is how it goes into verse 10. So then, like you said, he brings in several much more deep attributes here. He says, you shall fear the Lord your God. That's one, fear the Lord. Remember, you got to remember one thing that we forget to realize is in scripture, like we'll be like, how do you fear God? You have to remember this people group saw this God through his attributes destroy all other gods that stood before them. All the plagues that were there, they literally seen him shut down. Every plague represented one of the major gods of Egypt. So this is like, my God can make this happen. My God can make this happen. My God can. So God was the God of nature, the God of the weather, the God of the sea, the God of the locusts, the God of man. He was the God of all of these different things that these plagues were representing. It's like, dang, he's controlling the sky, he's controlling the winds, he's controlling everything until it gets to the last plague. It's like he even controls death. This is the God who loves us. It's the God of death. Gotta remember, he sent a death angel. So we talk about, oh, Halloween ain't real. Oh no, Passover probably looked like a scene literally out of a horror movie. I know we think about the little lambs and they petting them, and then then they go buy them a can of paint from Sherwin Williams and go paint it over. No, no, it was over 300,000 lambs that was slaughtered, right? But they witnessed themselves slaughtered. On top of that, recognizing that firstborn son of the Egyptians was killed by a death angel that the Lord sent. Our God is not for play. He is for bloodshed. Like you gotta so he's like, so fear me, but I'm on your side. All right, it's like that fight that you've seen that your homeboy get in. That's that homeboy that he will. Hey, I'm glad he was my friend because he'll get in a fight and he bing and he knock out everybody and he's like, "Come on, Jesse, we rolling. All right, cool. Well, shit, we go. I got the bully on my side. But but did I fear him? Heck yeah. I'm like, shoot, I want that 2-piece. Trying to know about 2 pieces. As I continue. So he's constantly reminding them of Egypt. He's constantly reminding them. So not only did he remind them of Egypt through being the God of death, but then you got to remember he was the God of war. Like these people are unarmed, ill-equipped. They have women and children and lambs with them, and they literally have the world's most powerful army chasing them with swords and bows and chariots and fire and spears and AK-47s and boomerangs and slingshots and ninja stars and smoke bombs and everything. So they are legitimately lambs to the slaughter. They would die. Like you gotta remember, like they're not in their reasoning, in their cognitive reasoning. In their cognitive reasoning, we're gonna die. These moths got AK-47s and I have a butter knife on me. I'm fixing to die. They're weighed down with all this gold, all this silver, all this booty, all this spoils, all these things that they got from Egypt, right? They have babies with them, and some of these women pregnant, and some of them 9 months pregnant, and some of them wobbling, they ankles are swollen, and just all kind of stuff is going on right now. And they're carrying and they're chasing down. So now they get to the Jordan, and the angel of the Lord splits open. Right. And I'm really trying to paint this picture because I think oftentimes when we think about, I've heard people say, well, why should you fear God? Imagine if this is what you're seeing. Imagine if your emotions was attached to this sight of God. We don't have that. We don't have cognitive reasoning of the power of God. We really don't. That wasn't us. And that's why he's constantly like, bro, do you not remember Egypt, bro? Like, do you not know? Like, I literally, once again, because he says, I'm not going to, he loves destroying. I don't say love. We've seen the Lord use water many times to destroy, right? The flood, boom, flood the earth. But guess what he did? The army of Egypt, guess what he did? He literally flooded these moths and attacked them with water. He used water as a weapon. So if you could imagine the children of Israel, where they're like, man, we done seen you split open the Jordan River, and I can't get a bottle of Dasani after 2 days, bro. Like, what's up? I can't get no Aquafina, Fina. but he's the God of death, the God of water, the God of war. Like he's the God of plague. See, like that's who he is. So he tells them again to fear me, stay on my side. So it's really interesting. These mugs just, he says, you see me wipe out gods. You see me wipe out weather. You see me wipe out animals. You see me wipe out king's sons. You see me wipe out armies. You see me rescue you out of the most powerful land in all of the world with my mighty strong hand. That's what it says. By my strong hand, I've rescued you out of Egypt. So he's saying, from a perspective, it's like you won't even be able to seek my wisdom until you begin to fear me. That still remains the same. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. This is why you have a lot of Jews and a lot of children of Israel, a lot of Hebrews that don't even use his name because they're so fear and reverence of him. They don't want to, but it's really interesting how now in our 21st century world, it's like how casual we treat the God of heaven. If he's not nothing to be afraid, like his son ain't coming to do the same thing one day. Like we acting like he done put his weapons up. No, he didn't. He says, I'm running this mug back. That's New Testament, right? He says, I'm running this mug back. So we try to, it happened with the children of Israel. So he's just like, yeah, the church, oh, it's going to happen too. I'm coming to get y'all. My son coming this time. So we better see that, hey, he's worthy to be feared. We'll think, oh, that's a bad thing, whatever. Then he goes on to verse 20, he says, and you shall serve him. Now, we've had this conversation several times this week. What's interesting is this. Here's how many times we treat God. We treat God as if he is, that we have an interior decorating company, and God is our client. We tell God, I'm an interior decorator, and I'm going to make your household really, really pretty. But I'm not interested in how you want it. I need you to step out or find something else to do and let me design and decorate this house to my liking and expect you to like it because I did it. So I think I may have polka dots and a lime green shag rug and zebra print pillows. And oh, I think this is cute. And I'm going to put a refrigerator in the bathroom because why? It's nifty and nasty. I'm going to put wallpaper on in the shower, right? And we're doing all this stuff. We're doing all these different elements of this is, oh God, just serve God, I serve. And we never once, and we don't continuously ask or seek after what he actually wants and what he actually likes or how he wants to be served or worshiped. And we have been almost conditioned to make up our own idea of what God likes because we think so. And we have literally been conditioned to do that. We've been conditioned to say, this is how the Lord should be served. Because why? Because if I put my hands up, one hand on my chest, close my eyes real tight, that's how he loves me to serve him. And never going into his word and let him see, you serve me like this. Serve me like this. Serve me like this. So when we study like the Shabbat, why? Because God wants to spend time with us during that time. Like that's his way. He gets to pick out his color preference in his own house. So we talked about it with this clinging to his house. We talked the prodigal son or the lost son. He came back into the father's house. Father knew where the robe was. Father knew where the ring was. Father knew where the calf was. The father knew where the kitchen was. Father had things in place and position so when his son comes home, he can tell his servants where to go get it so the celebration can begin upon the father's request. The son didn't come back and says, here's what we need to do right now. Even though he kind of did, he's like, hey, I'm gonna be a servant. Father said, shut up, boy. You ain't running nothing in this house. You don't pay no bills. You ain't running nothing. I'm gonna be a servant. You're gonna be whatever I say you're gonna be. You're gonna be my son. Now shut up. Come over here and give me a kiss. Tell your daddy you love him. Right? The son came there. I'm gonna tell my daddy what I'm gonna do. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna be a servant now. Now, boy, you're gonna be a son. Shut up. And Jaka coming into my house saying, Daddy, you know what? I think, well, Jaka know better, but I think I don't like the way you run the house. I would casually walk over to my phone, find a tripod, stand it up right there, nice and pretty. Go to my camera app, slide over the video, push the red record button, tell Jaka, say it again, so we can have it on camera. And I will wear that boy out. And then I'll go back and watch it for my entertainment, and I'll show it to his friends. And now during his senior day, I'm like, you remember that time? You was talking crazy. You thought you ran something in my house, you remember? And then his friends will be like, don't make me do to you what your daddy did to you. Happen in real life. That happened to a friend of mine. You know, he know better. He don't run nothing in my house. But oftentimes, when we say we want to be servants of God and sons and daughters of God, we don't even ask Father through Yeshua, through Christ, what the household rules are. Had a mug today. Gonna make all kind of plans about what I need to do and what needs to happen. And a friend is coming in town, and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not interested in trying to figure out your little casual friend social life. I got better things to worry about right now. Leave me alone. So I don't want to talk about it. Go tell your friend, go do something else. I'm not in the business right now and try to figure out your social life. Yeah, if his camera was on, he'd probably be beat red right now, but you can't see him. You see? But it's okay. But he ain't running nothing either. We have to approach God the way Jesus, Yeshua, Messiah told us to, as our Father. And if our Father has rules, he has a house, we are now welcome, like Brother Steve said, as foreigners to be welcomed into his home, but to serve him, we serve him according to the standard that he set before us. We don't get to be the interior decorator of his house. We don't get to choose. Who is God that he needs to counsel or advise men what should be going on in his own house? Which is interesting. I'll say it for later. So he goes on, and then he says this. He says in verse 20 again. So we got fear the Lord, serve the Lord, and then he says, cling to the Lord. Cling to. Now, here's an interesting thing, right? God is an invisible God. He has no shape of a man. He doesn't have, even his wind comes and goes, you can't catch it. How do I cling to something that I can't see, touch? How could I cling to something that's not tangible? Right? So in this culture, the only person that had any type of proximity close enough to God was Moshe, was Musa, was Moses. When he went up and he was in the presence of the Most High. He was so close to him. Listen, I guarantee you, the Lord, when we get to heaven, he's going to tell us, take your shoes off at the door. Because he told Moses, hey, take your shoes off. He had that shoe room too. He said, take your shoes off. You standing on holy ground, on sacred ground, on ground that God, don't be putting your shoe, take your shoes off. So we see that's a house rule. Take your shoes off. We know what was in the refrigerator was not in the refrigerator. He didn't bring out no ham hocks when they went to go kill the fattened cow. I'm gonna tell you that right now. They ain't had no side of bacon dip ranch on the side with they cat. I know that wasn't in the refrigerator. They didn't bring out steak and crab legs. I'm gonna tell you that wasn't on the table. So we got some. We have some house rules. You know, we know who sat at the head of the table. We know what they was eating and drinking. So he says, how do I cling on to this invisible God? And the only thing of like everything that they've seen of God was the invisible attributes. Romans chapter 1. They seen the invisible attributes very clearly. They seen the wind, they seen the sun, they seen the signs. They can't hold, like, how do you hold on to it? The only thing that God actually gave, only thing that he actually gave to people was his words. Was his words. So much so that his finger even etched it in stone tablets at one point. He actually he touched his words. His words brought forth life. Like his words was even we call them the 10 Commandments, but it's actually called the 10 words. And that was a gift that he gave to his people. Was the 10 words. We know, right, in 21st century Christ followers, in John chapter 1, it says, this word took on the form of humanity and walked in the man person of Yeshua of Nazareth. Right? So the word became flesh and dwelt among us. Prior to the word became flesh, the word was still word. And the person that had the words of God was the person of Moses. So how do I cling on to God? Is I cling on to the person that holds God's words. So there was clinging to Moses, to the one who held God's words. And this is where we get this concept of disciple making from, of having this person that have an experience or more of an experience of God's words. And I cling on to this person. And from that person, I am able to extract the wisdom, the knowledge, understanding, and the life, not because I don't have Holy Spirit, because the person has walked in the ways of Christ longer than me. I am able to rock, I'm able to cleave onto this person, almost spiritually matrimonial, right? Like think about the image that he gave, almost spiritually matrimonial, like because this was substance into God's word. And then when Yeshua came, he says, he was given this to be joined to me, to abide with me. It's another, if you see the Greek word translated divide, you also see the word abide, to be in, to join, to stay with, to cleave, to attach, to adhere. And then he goes on, and there's a time when Yeshua tells, he says, do not cling to me, because he's talking about that state that he's in. Don't cling to me in this state. I gotta go. But then he tells his disciples, but I would send you a comforter that would always be with you. Cling to that. And that's why the prayers is like, we hereby join ourselves together in the spirit of the whole, or the Ruach HaKodesh, join ourselves together. We are making a choice to cleave to one another because of the words of God and community and fellowship, because of the Ruach HaKodesh, because of the entity union, the entity of clinging comes through the Ruach. That's what makes us all brothers and sisters in the same family of God. So we cling to one another and we cleave to the fellowship of the believers that is not transactional. Is spiritually covenantal. So he says to cling to my words, cling to my people, cling to the things that represents me. And he says to have affection and loyalty towards those things. So then it goes on, and Yeshua has to correct people later. He says, don't even take any oaths, because people was taking oaths, even though it was a command, they was taking oaths so they wasn't cleaved to the words of God. So the fourth one is said, and take oaths in his name. So in other words, it's like when you're making, I could make a promise that says that God loves us. I could take an oath on that. I could claim that because he says it. It's in his name. It's in attaching myself to fearing him, to serving him, to clinging to his words. I therefore could take an oath. I could promise. I said, because it's impossible for God to lie. It's very possible for me to lie. So I can't take no oaths. I'm in and of myself. I cannot take no oath. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. But God's promises stand true. So if God takes an oath, he could swear by none greater than he swore by himself, right? And we see that. So if God swore by himself these things, I could say anything that God says and take it as an oath and swear by it. Why? Because God said it. I could swear by anything that God said because he said it. I cannot swear by anything that I say because I can't cling to my own words. I can't swear by anything that you say because I'm not clinging to your words. But if God says it, I can swear by it. So when he says, I am the Lord your God, I am God alone. I swear that he is God alone. I take an oath that he is God alone. Why? Because he said it. So that attachment and that adhesion essentially gives us the power to speak. That's why I said Yeshua says, anything that you ask in my name shall be done. Yeah, but if you a dead son, no, you can't, because you dead. So if you're not positioned, postured, spared, served, cling, love, obedient, then everything else you're operating on yourself. You can't just be like, in Jesus' name, I pray to be $1 million. Time out, wait a minute, time out. That's in your own words, because that is not a promise of God. But when God says it, when the Most High says it, when Elohim says it, when Yah says it, when Abba says it, when it's signed, sealed, delivered, I'm young, or I'm his. There you go. You see, those are practical. Those are transformative. I could begin to say, Lord, I love you because, first of all, because you first loved me, but I know that I could gain wisdom because of the fear of God. I know that I could serve him because he tells me how to. But I know I could cling to him because he gave me word. He gave his son. That's what he said. For God so loved the world that he gave his word. That whoever believes in his word will experience the presence of God because they believe in his word. goes on, and we just kind of finish up these last two verses here in Deuteronomy chapter 22, because this is a really, for me, when I studied Devach, when I studied joining, this was really the keynote verse that I really cling to, because the word clinging and cleaving from a matrimonial standpoint, from a covenantal standpoint, when it came to God, it was not beginning to be used during the journey in Numbers, but primarily in Deuteronomy. He kept on saying to cling to me. He never really said, he doesn't, I don't recall him making this proclamation in Exodus to cling to him. And there's almost as if, okay, first you're going to cling to me. You have no other options. It's just me and you. But as they begin to journey over these years, and they're starting to see all these other options and these other places and these other, like, we're going to the promised land. And look at these Amorites. He's just like, cling to me, 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 cleave to me, attach to me, bear me, serve me, love me. Like, nah, don't get distracted by all this other. Oh boy. Because all these, again, he wiped out all the Egyptian idols. And then he turned around and wiped away their golden calf. But now here's this next generation looking for a tangible representation of God worship. And he's now Deuteronomy over and over again. Cling to me, cling to me, cling to me, attach to me, loyal to me, affection for me, stay with me, bear me. Don't you remember Egypt? Don't you remember Egypt? Don't you remember, did your ancestors not tell you about how I rescued them with a mighty hand? Where are you going? Where are you going? Stay with me, stay with me, stay with me. And he just keep on constantly, all throughout Deuteronomy. And then the results of this is in 21, he says, he is your praise. He is your God, who has done for you these great and awesome things which your eyes have seen. It's like he's constantly almost begging his children to do much about him. It's almost, honestly, in the most respectful way, it probably would be considered pathetic how much he was begging for the affection of his children. It probably was pathetic, like, bruh, really? But I just loved it. He's literally begging. Then verse 22, he says, your fathers went down into Egypt with 70 persons, and now the Lord God has made you as the stars of heaven in multitude. Always trying to remind them, look what I've done for you. And it's all the way through the New Testament. It's like, remember what he's done for you. He rescued you out of slavery. Remember what he's done for you. Fear him, serve him, love him, cling to him, cleave to him. Why are you forgetting who he is? Why are you letting go of your adhesion to him? Why are you separating yourself from his word? Why are you separating yourself from his presence? Why are you not clinging to his word? Why are you not clinging to his fellowship, to his community, to his people, to his sages? Why are you not the vodka? Join yourself to him. That is the command, to join yourself to him, because the Father's always in the Father's house. He's going to be where he's at. But we see so many dead sons and dead daughters that's out of position, but they not close enough to get the ring. They're not in position to get the role. They can't celebrate with the fattened calf. They can't hear the lyres and the harps being played. They can't. Why? Because they're out in far country, detaching themselves, or have detached themselves away from the Father's house. Yeah. So yeah, appreciate it, bro. Steve, that was good. Yeah, and I think it's important to understand where these words are not casual words that we just need to just blow by. That's why I really love how Steve brings what seemingly is these word studies. They're more than word studies. These are true insight to the heart of God. It can make sense now when he says the church is the bride of Christ. Well, duh, from the very beginning, he's been trying to have the same matrimony from Adam and woman all the way to Yeshua and bride. Like this joining together is so important for him. He doesn't stop talking about it. It is a consistent conversation that he's always having. Thoughts, takeaways, questions, insights.
This was this was really good. Well, first, it had like when you first started, Brother Steve, it reminded me of it. Really, like it helped me to see that there was thought processes or ways of thinking where I realized, like, man, I was really, I don't know how to say it, Lava. How do you say the L one? Lava, is that how you say it? Lava?
I don't know the pronunciation, but that's how I said it. Lava. Yeah.
I said it how you said it, so that's what we say it now. It's like lava. No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So just realizing like there was some, I think just ways of thinking and thought processes that I realized like, dang, like I realized like my understanding of clinging, like I only had one, and it wasn't necessarily what Abba calls it or what he even wants or desires. And so that was one. So that was necessary, like very, very helpful. So yeah, thank you. And then also just kind of towards the end, we were talking about okay, so I asked the question to myself based off kind of just what Father is saying. It says, ask the Father his rules that we may serve him properly. And so I was just kind of thinking, dang, do I ask him, and like how often, because is it ever that I'm in full understanding of them? Like just thinking about those. And then also just all of this has kind of led me to the question, and it kind of tore me up a little bit. I have been finding when I pray with, so more recently I've been praying more often with my sister, and it's been amazing, like amazing just to sit and pray with somebody. And it caused me to think, like, how often do I consider myself sitting and praying with Abba and with his son and with his spirit? Like, how often do I sit and just like seek to truly like pray with him? Which also in mine like goes to clinging to his words, because if I were to do that, like even in John, I think it's chapter 17, 15, 17, one of those two, I think it's 17, where he does like the whole chapter is basically Yeshua praying. And so it just was very, I'm taking that away, like to be more mindful of the Father and his rules, and doing things with him versus always, either asking of him or Um, even like maybe more often when I do start to feel myself kind of like rub up against some things and come in opposition, to really readjust myself, and sit and just come sit by him and ask him, like sit with him and ask him, versus like trying to come against him. And the word is like being so stubborn in my own way.
Just a real quick question, then I'll let you go. Is it too much to ask the Lord how he wants to be served? Is that an evil thing to do? Is that a wrong thing to do? Is that is that something that's not Christian? Man, we can't say, Lord, how can I serve you? You know, or how do you want to be served? Do you tell us how you want to be served? Or is it like, oh no, we could do whatever we want to? Question of the heart. All right, Tiny, go ahead. I think you was unmuted.
Yeah, I just never really seen like the son in the prodigal son. I just never really thought about like his position and like what it took for him to get back to a position to where he was then like welcomed back into the family, and then also just been given back like his sonship, essentially. Um yeah, it reminded me of like it made me think about repenting. So it's just like, okay, um I wandered off into this far country. All right. I've attached myself to these things. Now I'm in my wits end. Um, I see that there's nothing in my power that I could do to get myself out of this. If I don't go back, if I don't turn back to my father, I'm going to perish. Let me go ahead and go. And then, yeah. And then how the father, like when you saw him coming back to him, he met him and he took him back into his house. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Um, yeah, that's pretty. Yeah.
Tiny, that's good. I never thought about this as well too. I always thought, I tell you, I always thought that the grace happened essentially like the moment of grace really happened like once the father saw the son, and then he saw him and then he went to go meet him. But it wasn't until just now I thought about at the moment that he came to recognition, right? We don't know how far that journey was from where he was at to get back to the father's house. So even how, I mean, he was hungry, he didn't eat, right? So he didn't have food to sustain him. He was probably weak. He was tired. Probably didn't have no shelter, had no money, could have been famished. He was protected. No animals attacked him. No robbers came and got him. That even fact when he made up his mind, how God's grace even still took him to the Father's house. He didn't die even on the way there. Like he was even being protected unless he was on his way back. I always kind of start the story like, oh, he's finally there in the land. His father sees him. But he was given sufficient amount of strength to even make it back. Like that's like, I've never seen God's keeping power in that story until like he didn't get robbed, didn't get stabbed, didn't get killed, didn't get attacked by animals, didn't faint from famine, didn't. We know that's the truth. Yeshua says it when he's up with the crowds of 4,000, like we got to feed them because they'll faint on the way home. Like this boy didn't faint. He he had enough, he was sustained enough to get back to the Father's house. So I see grace even from the moment that he says, I'm making a decision to go back. The Lord sustained him even to get back home. I've never, that's where grace really started. And that for me, now I see that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. All right, somebody.
I had a couple takeaways. I think the reminder of what Abba did in Egypt, and just to fear him, like that representation of like he was the god of war. Like he took down the entire Egyptian army by opening up the sea and just eating them with it. Like I don't often think about that enough. Um, and even the Israelites didn't, like the second generation of them that were entering into the promised land, like they had to be reminded over and over again to fear him. Um, and I'm just so easy to forget that. And then that point that you made, it's like he's coming back to do that again. Like New Testament talks about like that ain't the last we're gonna see of that. Like he's up there just waiting, you know? And so that reminder of like, man, this is the God that I serve. I need to be in awe of that more and to think about that more often. Um, but then also what Brother Steve was talking about, how he mentioned this in the prodigal son story, but I think this was also something that I think he mentioned. When we join ourselves to the Lord in love and service, we don't have to worry about getting like excommunicated from the family. Like we don't, it's not anything we can earn. It's not anything that we can work for. Like his love and the grace that he showed us in giving us Yeshua will never earn. Like as many commands as I try to obey, like that's never something that I can earn. And so trying to be saved from the penalties of disobedience and trying to do things just to be made right with the Father, like that's not the correct heart posture. I should be doing it just out of love. And just a constant reminder that is very helpful, because it is easy to get caught up in like feeling like I have to do these commands so that I can get Abba's love. Like, and that's just not how it works. So those are my probably two takeaways. I did also have a question. In the verse in Isaiah 14, when the house of Jacob is mentioned, is that a simile to Israel? Like, is that another way of saying Israel?
Yeah, house of Jacob is this is another reference to the house of Jacob, and the children of Israel are the same.
Okay.
But they're referred to the same group of people.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. But yeah, that was all I had. Thank you, Fig. Thank you, Brother Steve.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, you know, I actually, yeah, just kind of another, not to say it's it's not really a cute image, but you know, we say that Yeshua's up in heaven sitting at the right hand of the Father. He's sharpening a sword. He's literally like he's up there sharpening a sword.
I don't think about that enough. That's wild. That's a good image.
He's sharp. He's on that sharpening blade. Yeah, he's not up there, you know, drinking kosher mimosas. No, this mug's, you know, eating a Danish. This mug is up there sharpening swords, bruh. He's coming. He says, "I'm coming to fight. Coming for war, bro." Like, glad I'm on his side. All right, somebody else. What you got?
Hey, well, this week I was telling you guys that I've been under the weather really bad. And I could not. I didn't even have the strength to get up and study like I normally do. And man, I'm telling you, when you don't have that word in you, like you've been having every day, Man, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. If you don't have that word in you, you can hear me better now? Okay. Man, every type of wicked demon that I had in the past, man, like they surrounded me. Right? So okay, we got him now because he's weak. And I just felt that I was getting ready for to have a spiritual breakthrough that Monday. But man, that Monday my body got attacked, and I mean I haven't felt that sick in quite some time. And I'm still just recovering. But now here today, I'm like listening at what we discussed. And now I understand why God had to keep reminding the children of Israel, I am your God. How crazy can you be? I brought you out of all these things, and you still trying to go and make another God. There ain't no other God. I am. I am. And when we think in our mind that we gonna get away and just serve God any type of way we want to, like he our genie, you know, we just rub on the can, he just do what we say. Like he living for us. He's living for God. And you brought out so many things today about the dead son. Like there's a lot of dead sons out there that need to come on back home to God. Because I had to discuss this word, and I need to get, I can talk so much about it, but my boss gonna go in a minute. But I have to ask you a question. The word be used in this Protestant son, we use the word compassion. Compassion, you think? Was it compassion that the father had compassion for his son? So what is the difference between companionship and pity? Like, okay, if I got compassion for you and not pity, like I see people on the street and I want to have compassion for them, but not pity. What would you say the big difference is? And I got to let my voice rest. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely conditional, like usage. In other words, they can be used interchangeable as far as having, you know, because right, you could even say having mercy, right? Like you have mercy on somebody normally has a tendency of I've either not did something for this person. Having pity on somebody, and what I again, I'm just using just the English words, we're not breaking it down to another word. Having pity on somebody, it has a tendency of having a connotation of being a little more negative, like man, they did something bad or something's wrong. It's just like, man, you just have to have pity on them. Almost like when I think of pity, I almost think about it's not necessarily from as a sincere place, as more of a conscientious, like I'm more mentally aware, like I could have pity on it, like have pity on a dog or something like that. Like, oh, you got hit, oh man, you know, pity on a dog versus having compassion for somebody. It feels like it has more of a I want to connect with you. When I think about compassion, I think about like, man, I may not be able to do anything, but my compassion has almost has my emotion or has my insides wanting to do something or to be there and it wants to lend me more to an action when I'm thinking about compassion versus pity could just be like, oh man, that's too bad. And it doesn't really pity doesn't really lend me to do anything. Has a tendency of saying, man, I'm really have compassion on this person. If I see somebody that's cold, I think it's a better example. See somebody that's cold outside. I think pity would say, dang, that sucks that it's cold outside. I think compassion would say, here's a Coke and here's a cup of coffee, because this would help bring you out of that place of need. Let me have compassion on you. So it feels as if I was to hear the difference just in my theism, I would think pity doesn't really follow an action, but I think compassion has, and the action, like the action of compassion could just be sitting and listening to somebody. I don't necessarily have to do something, but I gave up something to try to help bring this person into a better state. So like when Job's friends had compassion on him, they went to go shiver with him and went to go give up their time and their livelihood to be there in their humanity, versus his wife was just like, oh my gosh, you're just terrible. You suck. Trust God and die. Like that was more like pity versus compassion. So pity seems not to have an action, compassion seems to do, or seems to. So, comma, that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This helped a lot. A lot. Answered a question that I had a while ago about how to cling to the Lord. And just very practical instructions of how to do that. This was encouraging, convicting, led to some repentance, all that good stuff. But sorry. You said that the Lord is worthy to be feared. And that was, I've always heard, the Lord is worthy to be praised. He's worthy to be praised. But that's the first time I've ever heard he's worthy to be feared. And like thinking about it in that way, and like, yeah, he is worthy to be feared. And talking about the fear of the Lord and how the children of Israel, like what their eyes saw him do, like him taking out all of those other gods and destroying the world's power for the sake of love for them. And it just made me wonder, like, what does the war in my heart look like? Because they had that tangible picture of, this warrior. But I've never seen war. And so, like, I don't know. Yeah, just, I guess going back to look at the stories of him as a warrior, and I don't know, trying to paint a more tangible picture of that so I want to grow in fear of the Lord. Yeah, and then yeah, that's it.
There's a video that's circulating on the interweb, and it takes place at what seems to be a family's party or a get together of a sort, and these two little children were playing, and there's a little boy and a little girl, and the little boy takes this toy from this little girl. And the little girl and the little boy start getting into a little argument, and the little girl they're ruffling and they're playing, and the girl's dad comes up and she says, hey, Johnny, Charlie, whoever, give her back her toy. And he says, no. And then the father again proceeds to say, hey, give her back her toy. The little boy again says, no. So the father more sternly says the third time, give her back her toy right now. I'm not playing with you, of some sort. So the father gives, so the little boy gives the girl back the toy. He's like, fine. And then he pushes the little girl when he's done. Now this father, being indignant, smacks this little boy. just smacks the mess out of him. Smack. Well, the little boy's father sees his son get smacked by his dude, and he goes up to approach him, and he gets smacked too. Then the mama came and tried to reconcile, and she gets smacked too. So then next thing you know, everybody's trying to console this dude, and he smacked. He is smacking everybody. Smack, smack, smack. I mean, everybody can get it. Everybody can get it. This mother probably smack about whap. He double smacking. Smack him. I mean, he's smacking everybody. Police came. Smack. Another police came. Smack. Everybody came. Smack, smack. Little kids. Smack. He just smacking everybody. Cat in the tree. Smack. Anybody could get it. That's what Abba did in Egypt. I digress. Y'all know a video I'm talking about? If I find, let me see if I can find it. I'm gonna put it in the link. But this straight up with Abba. He over here smacking up some folks.
Sorry, I remember my last takeaway.
Go ahead.
When Brother Steve said, when we join ourselves to the Lord in love and service, we become family. We need not worry that he will separate us from his people. Yeah, that was very, very helpful. Very helpful.
So one of the most successful.
Mike, can you repeat that, please? Oh, right, I mean, Mike, can you repeat that?
Yes, sir. When we join ourselves to the Lord in love and service, we become family. We need not worry that he will separate us from his people.
Yeah.
Hello. How do I word this? When Abba says cling to him, just like how do you cling to him? And then there's the picture that you put in, just like how do we cling to him? We cling to his words, right? And then we also got to cling to somebody who's clinging to his words, because we don't, like the children of Israel, they had to cling to Moses because he had God's word. Like he was the one to deliver God's word to them, teach them God's word. So they had to cling to Moses, but they were also clinging to God because they were clinging to the words that Moses would speak that came from God. And I just see how that's important today. Just like there's a lot of lost people out here. There's a lot of people that wants to know truth and they wants to know God's word. They want to know God, but they don't have anybody to cling to. And I saw that was in my life. It's like I didn't really have nobody to cling to. I didn't see anybody, or I wasn't following anybody that was clinging to the words of God that I could cling to so I could know God. And I just see that's important when it comes to clinging to God, because if you are clinging to God, and you have to, like, I think it's like a must. You have to be clinging on to somebody else, or you have to be able to learn from somebody else. And then, like, also just like if you're not clinging on to somebody else, you're probably going to cling on to the lies. Like a lot of the lies, like social media. Like it's easy to cling on to all the Christian stuff that's on social media just because it talks about God, it talks about Jesus. But if you don't know truth, then it's going to be easy to fall into the lies. That's why it's important to know truth and know God's word. And then another thing was the picture of how we are the interior decorators, and Abba, he's our client. Like we need to be in contact with our client. It's like, hey, what about this? Like, what do you think about this? Like, in this room, what do you think we should put up in here? Or just stuff like that. Just asking Abba the questions like, what do you think? Like, how do you think the house should be? And like he gives us his instructions, he gives us his house rules, he gives us his outside rules, he gives us like all the rules and things on how he wants his house to be built, how he wants his house to look. And then when you just gave the pictures, like, nah, all right, God, you're my client, but I'm gonna need you to just step out so I can do this. I can make this for you and then make it look good and stuff. But I'm gonna put my input. So I just see that was a really good picture of just, I don't know how we or me as a human being could make my own plans and say, hey, look, it's God's plan, but in reality, God ain't put any like input in it. So it was a hard check, just like, all right, how am I inviting Abba? Well, how am I being a good business person with Abba when it comes to decorating his house? So
Let's do a share.
When Shem was talking, I thought of something I'd been meditating on a little bit of, and it just kind of activated was the scripture of Psalm 1, where it talks about, blessed is the man who's not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. Just thinking about, like, I was meditating on that verse and thinking about it, and it's like the first three things that you're not doing is you're not walking with the wicked, standing with sinners, or sitting with scoffers, and those are all physical people. So I was meditating on, like, how is it then that it's not like you're standing or sitting or walking, it's almost like what it presented was just meditating and just thinking and muttering, of course. And it wasn't a physical thing. It was much more like a verbal thing on the word, meditating on the word, really chewing on that. And it wasn't as tangible as standing, sitting, and walking, I feel like, with these human beings, until just listening now and kind of piecing this together now of finding that, just having those people who have also meditated on it and walking with those people. But then also, like, even back in the day for the people of Israel, I don't know how many of them, I mean, none of them were reading the word, because it wasn't written at the time of Moses. The only thing that they had was literal spoken word, the words that came out of the mouth of Moses. And the only way that words can be portrayed and given out is through the mouth of somebody else. And so it's like, by necessity, like, you have to have somebody speaking these words in order to hear them. And so it's not like, now we have Bibles all over the place. We have Bible apps, we have our phones, and we can listen to it and all this type of stuff. But for much of history, much of Israel's history, I don't know how many of them could have read, but that much of their intake of it was somebody else speaking it, somebody else meditating, repeating it, letting it come out of their mouth. And then, of course, it all also is activating the thought of Jesus flesh, the word became flesh, and then it was lived out. And it was not only spoken by somebody physically, but it was lived out in the human life of Yeshua. So just meditating on all that, I think that's kind of what is being activated right now. And then everything else was all very good. So a lot of things to chew on and think on and meditate on.
That gives kind of a path of thought for me as well. two things. Seth, that you pointed out, standing, sitting, walking. That kind of reminds me of Deuteronomy chapter 6, where it tells us kind of those postures of how to obey the commands in standing, sitting, walking. But then I can't help but to think that every time you see Yeshua in the Gospels, he has the tendency of being in one of those three postures, standing there by the river, sitting there, or walking along the side. Like he's constantly standing, sitting, and walking. They're always making mention of Yeshua either standing, sitting, or walking. So now my thought time, he was standing in godly counsel, he was sitting in righteous paths, and he was walking in I don't know what the opposite of scornful is, but I guess justice, the seat of justice. So he's walking in the seat of justice, which is weird, sitting in a path and standing in the counsel. So how do you sit in a path? I thought you're supposed to walk in a path, but he's sitting in, that gives me some algorithms to work with, like even in sitting in, thought process. Thank you. I'll just leave it there because I could chew on that for a long time. So yeah, that's good. Anyone else?
For me, just the question of how do you fear the Lord, and understanding like the people that were to fear the Lord, like they saw like some traumatic things, like for real in Egypt, like I bet the kids are like scarred for life, like for real, like looking back and seeing like Egyptians like drowning in like, I don't know, there's a lot. And that made me think too, God used water as a weapon, not only in this instance, but also in the flood too. So that gives Deuteronomy 28, like when it talks about let my teaching drop as the rain, like more understanding, because it's like, man, like that rain, it almost seems like there's like two opposite sides of it. Like the flood completely wiped out everybody, but then also the flood uncursed the ground. So like it's crazy, like those two different, I guess, parallels are like it's pretty crazy. And then also just the the simple statement that like literally God tells us how to serve him. And like so often like I can get so caught up in self where like I'm thinking of all these like brilliant plans in my mind that I think are brilliant. And like, okay, like how am I using this for the Lord? But like at the end of the day, it's like, bro, like I'm so far off, it's like it's just written in stone. It's literally written in stone, his word is. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Good. Excellent.
I think for me, much like a lot of what other people were saying, it was just really good to see like just these two different ways of like joining yourself with Lava and Dabak. Did I say that right? It definitely brought some clarity just on like how I can better cling to the Lord. And then in Genesis 2, just with like in reference to like marriage and joining yourself to like Adam joining himself to the woman, it was just like, man, that's like how the Lord was with Israel. Like Fig, how you were saying, could it be that he gave him this command prior because he knew like, okay, next chapter you're gonna want to get rid of her, but like could it be that Yah was also demonstrating like the ultimate, like this is what it looks like to have this Dabak type of relationship. Like he made covenant with himself, like way before Egypt, way before like, the people of Israel continued to turn away from him. But he's like, no, this is set in stone, like it's not going to change. And so I thought that was cool. And then also just thinking of the name Israel, like
could it be that every time that like they see that, like, they're named Israel because it's to remind them to cling to him, to remind them to not just have this transactional relationship with him, but like to actually cling to the Father. Yeah. And then another one was just the importance also of cleaving to the fellowship of believers, and like just how important it is. Like, it's a gift that he gave us, the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, that he gave us his Spirit, but like kind of like how Seth was just processing through, like, and even just this in general, like it's so important because the way that we how do I say this? The way that we like process and the way that we speak about him is differently. And so there may be a way that we need to hear something, hear his word. And if we're not cleaving to like the fellowship of believers, like kind of how it says in Hebrews, like if we're not cleaving to each other, then like we might miss out on that, hearing his word. And then lastly, just a question for myself, just in terms of, in light of the prodigal son story, like the part that really just like hit my heart was when like the father says that the son was dead. And so it's like, if I'm not cleaving to his words, then and I'm not like consuming him, like, then am I dead? Which reminded me of like Deuteronomy 32 when Moses was saying, like, these words aren't just words, like they're your life. And in John 6, when Yeshua talks about how he's the bread of life, like, no wonder they're continually talking about how like consuming him or clinging to him, clinging to his words, like that brings life. But just a reminder of like sin, self, all of that separates, which is like equivalent to death. And so how am I cleaving to actually the things that he says, rather than clinging to empty words or lies? Like, yeah, those are my takeaways.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting too. Teacher Kayla, that you have Jacob, who later is called Israel. And the word Jacob means heel grabber, or to grab hold of the heel. And then Israel means like God prevails. So it's almost as if like in us in our Jacob state, if we will hold on to God, he will prevail. So I know something I'm gonna kind of chew on, but that's good. Okay. Anyone else?
I hopped on this joint right after you started talking, right when Brother Steve was finishing up, but you
You
started
hopped on
talking.
what? We hopped on what?
Hello?
You
Hear me?
hopped on what?
I get my bad, man. I said I hopped on this joint. I got on the Zoom right after Brother Steve was finishing up his PowerPoint. And right whenever you began talking, and you were talking about these cling words. I didn't catch the words for real, But I remember one of them, you were talking about how we cleave on to God. And made me think of an illustration that you gave this one time of whenever you're a heel grabber, like somebody who grabs onto the heel. Like if you grab onto the heel of someone and they step, you have to really cling on. Because if you're not stepping with them and moving with them, whenever they make a movement and you're not prepared for it, you're gonna fall off. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you have to constantly cling on, constantly hold on, and be constantly like in relationship and constantly touching them and constantly like being enthralled with them basically. Or you're gonna fall off. You're gonna lose focus. You're gonna be shaken off and oh, I gotta scurry on and grab back onto the hill rather than you can just stay there and then your strength increases as holding on because that's how endurance works. If you want to get stronger at a lot of things, you squeeze and hold these different positions and it makes you stronger overall type of thing. So that's what really stood out. And then a lot of the takeaways, it's crazy just the way, how do I put it? Like how important like word study is when done in the proper light. Well, if it's not just because I want to know a definition of a word, but it's because I want to gain more understanding of the scriptures. And then now how this one word has now been plugged into 11 million scriptures, and now we just gain more obedience type of thing. So I think it's just so important that whilst learning scriptures, learning words so you can learn culture and then plugging it back in constantly and not just sitting on, oh, I know what that word means. You know what I'm saying? But yeah.
Yeah, Keith, I agree. Word study should teach us how, right? Like it should teach, like studying the word should teach us that. We know what it is, we kind of know, but sometimes we don't know. Oh, like, say, oh, okay, I know this word, join. I see to join to the Lord. Great. But in studying the word, it's actually teaching us how to do it. That's what the word study should be, is I'm learning how to be obedient. I'm already committed in my heart to do it. Now, as I am continuously learning, I'm seeing how, and I do that through repetitious word study or gaining understanding of the word. Again, that's giving land of scriptures, give descriptions of what things are so that you're able to walk in obedience to it. That's good. All right, anyone else?
I'm moving these away from me.
Hi guys. I'm Liz. I'm just hopping on here for the first time, so thanks for having me. And I think Asher was talking about this, but I was a little bit distracted. But I'm definitely going to be thinking about the fear part of it this week. A long time ago, I read like in my youth study Bible to replace the word fear with love. So when God was telling us to fear him, he was really telling us to love him. But I've thought of that for a long time, and thinking about this now in the context of how the Israelites saw God is just way different. You don't really think about how God sent the angel of death. Like, we don't really sing songs in church about, oh God, you sent the angel of death. Like, that's just not what we talk about, but in reality, that's what it is. So I wrote down part of loving God is remembering what he's done for us. So for the Israelites, that was really relevant. And that's the truth about God, is that he has a powerful arm. So it's not a negative thing to fear him. It's just part of remembering who he is. So I'm going to be thinking about that a lot this week.
That's good. Yeah, and it's so interesting because Yeshua says, I do nothing, I say nothing unless I heard my father say it. I do nothing unless my father does it. Like God taught his son how to fight. So I think we just need to, this old hippie loving, you know, Chaco wearing Jesus with a daisy in his ear. This ain't that. Maybe the Chacos, but he had no daisy in his ear. Sweet.
I just have a few questions and a thought. With the prodigal son, even though the son, just a reminder that even though sometimes, you might feel as if what you have done, or you owe the father something. If you don't pay up, or if you don't perform well, you forget that you're the father's, and that you forget that you belong to the father. But the thing about the father is, like, even in those moments of where we might not feel as if we're performing well, or we're or we feel like we owe something to him, he never forgets who we are, because everything that his prodigal son did, the father knew. When he saw him coming home, no matter how ragged he was, how dirty he was, he still recognized his son. So that's just a thought. The other thought or question is, I heard a lot about fearing God, and we talk about praising God, but not fearing God. My question is fearing God a form of praise? Is that a way that he wants to be praised, or is that a way that he wants to be worshipped, is in our fear of him? And the other question, when Yeshua told Mary not to cleave to him right now, I'm gonna save that one. So yeah, that's it. I'm gonna take that one offline. That's it.
Couple things. I would like Deuteronomy chapter 10, verses 20. It goes, you shall fear the Lord your God, and you shall serve him, and hold fast to him, and take oaths. He is your praise. So that does have me questioning, is that are doing those things, is that becomes a form of praise, because he is your praise, or so that's interesting right there. So yes, and then also kind of to Liz's point, and to Superted's point about the fear. We do know in Proverbs it tells us what fear does, right? Yeshua consistently tells his disciples to do not fear like created things. Do not fear man. He says, do not fear the one who could take the body, but fear the one who could take the body and put the soul in hell. Right? But then also the Proverbs tells us that fear is the ingredient for wisdom. You cannot gain God's wisdom without fearing him. So without fearing him, you are now innately or inherently saying, I'm going to walk in foolishness because I do not fear him. And that fear is not reverencing his words, not clinging to him, not trusting in his words, not repeating what he said. All those things, those postures that says, I could tell God, almost like goes back to that child that has no fear of his parent. And when someone says, here's how this thing should be done, you have no fear. It means that child look like a fool. Jaka come home and tries to tell me what to do and says, this is the way things should be run. And I don't really care about no consequences because I don't like my bedtime. I don't like my chores. I don't like the fact that I have to do this. Is that he is positioning himself in foolish ways and in harmful ways because he doesn't have a fear of the fact that I am the father of this house. So I believe that when we think of fear, it does absolutely have a foundation of reverence and recognition that he's nothing to be played with. But you can fear God and love him at the same time. We see this happen in people that we respect, that we reverence. Our bosses, we may not say we love our bosses, but there's an admiration for many people. Well, let me be careful because some of y'all have some terrible bosses, but that's like, hey, my boss is cool, and I want to make sure that I'm pleasing and serving my boss because I know that my job is at stake. With the Lord, it's like, it's not that my salvation is at stake, but my position or my obedience is at stake, when I'm not fearful and loving God at the same time. Go ahead. Go ahead. Should we tell you got something?
No.
Okay, I just see you took it off mute. Okay, very good. All right, anyone else? Okay, all hearts clear. I do want to do this before we leave. Hopefully I can hear the audio. Hold on. Let's see here. Screen. What screen is that? We'll show what I was talking about. Can y'all see that? No, hold on. What y'all see? No, y'all see nothing. Y'all see me. Okay, there we go. For those that ain't never synced it. Hold up. How do I make this thing bigger? There we go. All right, here we go. Hopefully y'all get the audio as well. If not, I put it in the thing. So right, here we go.
Successful
Y'all hear that?
recent history comes the follow-up series, The Slab, Part 2. You know what? They'd already started repairs, so we couldn't even take it anywhere else. Shit, tell me about it. 4.5. What? Give it back. I said give it back now. No, what? You just stop it. Barry.
So that was my analogy of Abba and the children of Israel. So when he went to Egypt, he tried to tell Pharaoh, give me my kids. He said, give me my kids. And he tried to warn them, and then he just started smacking up everybody. So there you go. That's your entertainment for the night. All hearts clear? All right. Awesome. All right. Big Tiger, you want to pray for us?